This time around you join me down on Sunnyside 1. We are going to follow on from the last video, which were the winter bait mixes, hook baits, liquids, etc. This time we're going to talk tactics and tips. First of all, we are going to start with location. As always, location is key, but this is ever so increasingly difficult in the colder months because the fish just aren't as active and signs are a lot harder to spot, if there's any such signs to spot at all. So when I approach setting up in the winter, ideally you get here nice and early, have a good walk round. You're looking for shoals, that would be perfect. Not really realistic in the winter because shoals can be very few and far between. But if there isn't much wind on the lake and it's flat calm, have a walk round with Polaroids on if it's sunny, or binoculars looking for little patches of fizzing, bubbles. This can often give away the carp's location at this time of year. Sometimes it's not possible to spot where the fish are, so you've got to go on a hunch or an educated guess as such. There's all different things to take into consideration. The weather is a massive impact. If there's a freezing cold wind, the fish will often be on the back of the wind. If it's a nice warm southerly, they could quite possibly be on it. If it's really cold, the deep water would be my go-to, but if the sun's out, don't neglect the margins and the shallow areas of the lake. Even in the depths of winter, when it is sunny, you can often see fish just a foot under the surface in the shallow parts. So you need to take this all into consideration when you're picking where to start your session. Once you have picked a spot to start your session, what I recommend doing is spreading your rods out, try and find where the fish are, maybe different depths, maybe fish wanting the margins to some snags. Try and find where them fish are holding. But once your rods are out, don't take your eyes off the water. There's not many hours of daylight at this time of year, so it's crucial to be active, out, wrapped up warm, looking for signs. And when you see a sign, don't just look at it and think, oh, it's not too far away, might move on to me. Get up, move a rod to it. Often it can lead to a quick bite just by doing these small actions. At Wyreside, we normally get asked a lot where the fish are. It's a great thing to do. Ask bailiffs, ask locals where the fish have been holding up, because a lot of the time in the winter the fish will hold in one area and stay there for the majority of the winter unless the weather does change from cold to really warm, etc. But like go-to pegs, I'll quickly run through. On Sunnyside 1, where we are now, if it's a little bit colder, I'd be looking like peg 9, peg 6, fishing into the deep water. But if it is milder, peg 11 and peg 7 and 8, fishing to the margins and close in, can also score really well. On Sunnyside 2, the central area of the lake is a winner all year round. However, in recent years, the fish have loved it in pegs 7, 8, 10 and 11. And this is because there is depths of down to 12 foot. And on foxes, again, the middle of the lake is very good, but 6 and 7 would be my go-to. Now, moving on from location, we are going to talk about tactics, what I use in the winter. In this section, I'm going to split it into two parts. The first part I'm going to do is uncarpy conditions. What I mean by that is high pressure, really cold, no clouds in the sky. When you're going fishing, because you've got to go, because that's the only time you can go. It's not a weather front you'd pick to fish in, but a lot of the time is against us, so you go when you can. So my go-to tactics when you're up against it, the conditions aren't the best, would be, the first approach would be single up baits, regularly casting these to areas of any sort of activity, or just keep roaming them round trying to find the fish. And what I'd use to do that is a Ronnie rig of about 12 inches with a coated braid but a supple one, so this will sit over everything. Little bits of weed, as long as you're getting a drop, this rig will presentate. And you'll see my hook bait there is an ultra pop-up, so that's ultra buoyant essential fruit with 13 maggots tied to the top. I don't weight these pop-ups down. What I do is trim the hook bait down until it flutters down and just rests on the lake bed like so. So if you do cast over any debris or anything, that will still present itself. And the maggots, it's just oozing more attraction. They're gooed up maggots, as I mentioned in the last video, and that's just a mouthful and could just get a reaction out of a carp when the conditions are against you. The second tactic I use when things are tough is the famous solid bag. The solid bag, you're going for one bite at a time. We're not feeding them, we're trying to get a bite. So keep them small. This is a small solid bag, and I've only used 3/4 of it. And then inside I've got a tiny hook bait. This is a plastic piece of corn, and that critically balances itself and sinks really slowly. So if a fish does come in and have a look, that hook bait's the first thing up and into the fish's mouth. This is on a stem. I often use stems in the winter because feeding windows can be small and you want to recast quite often, or if you do get a fish, get the rod straight back out there and try and maximise that feeding window. A little squirt of one of your favourite liquids, mine would be a goo, just inject it in and give that really boosts the attraction. So you can cast these around, try to find the fish, and you're not leaving loads of bait all over the place, and it's fantastic to get you that winter bite. And when it comes to using bait, it's very important to think about application. Even when the conditions are spot on for December, January, February, the fish are still a lot slower than they'd be in the spring and summer. So you don't want to be piling bucketfuls in. Find a nice spot, position a couple of rigs on it, and then 2-3 spoms to get your spot started, maybe 4, 5, depending on which lake you're on. Think about the stock. Or you're on the fish. If you're on the fish and you know that there you're seeing activity, you can get away with maybe going up to 10 spoms. But if you're fishing on wire, you want 2 or 3 spoms. If you're on foxes where there's a lot more fish, you'd get away with going up to 10 if you're definitely on them. And then just keep watching your rods, watching the water. If there's activity in your zone but you're not getting bites, or you're getting loads of liners, just trickle another 1 or 2 spoms in. But remember, with spomming in the winter, accuracy is critical. So if you're a little bit new to it and you're not very good at spomming, I would suggest sticking to the unfavourable condition tactics. When I am fishing 2 rods on a spot in the winter over bait, the rig I would always use is a simple illusion D rig. So without me waffling on too much further, I'm going to get on and tie my version of the D rig and also mount the hook bait of choice and show you how to thread maggots. The first thing you'll need is some normal mono. Doesn't really matter what sort of mono this is, I always go for 20 pound. So I start off by peeling probably 1.5 foot of this off, just to give myself plenty of room. And you can afford to with lime because you get 1,000 meters on a spool, so it's not like you're using expensive braid. So I'll just trim that off, plenty of room, and then I'll start by taking a hook. Hook of choice would be a wide gape in size 4 or size 6. A size 6 for open water, but if I'm fishing to them snags or weedy areas, a size 4. So then you take one end of the nylon, pass it through the front of the eye of the hook, and then pull it down a couple of inches. Pinch it in place at the base of the hook and then tie a simple knotless knot. With this, I whip down to around where the point of the hook is, just below the point. With this line, it'd be about 12 turns, but take into consideration the diameter of the line you're using, it might be a few more turns or a few less. Once you've wrapped it around 12 times, you go through the back of the hook with the end of the nylon, like so, and pull that down nice and tight. Take your tag end and just give that a right good pull, and it comes just past the point, which is perfect. So next, you would need a ring swivel. This is to attach your hook bait on to, because you haven't got a hair on this rig. So if you take a micro ring swivel like so, thread the line through the big eye in the ring swivel and pull it down, and then you are putting the back of the tag end back through the back of the hook, so you're creating a D on the back. Your tag end, you'll want to leave probably 15 mils of tag end, and then take a lighter, and then as the tag end is melting, when it gets 5 mil away from the hook, just dab it with a lighter to give it a blob to stop it coming back out the back of the hook, and then that will form a nice neat D on the back of the shank of the hook with that swivel free to move there where you'd mount your hook bait. The next step is to take an anti-tangle sleeve, and then you'd thread this onto the rig. Remember, these go on thin end first, and drop that down. And then I always use long rigs, especially with this sort of rig. I like to use 12 inches plus. So once you've found, don't do this to measure, I do it by eye. Once you've got a length you are happy with, just tie a standard figure of 8 loop knot in the top, and then pull the tag and the hook link in the same direction and pull the loop. And then all what's left to do is take the tag end off. Don't cut it right at the knot, because if it does slip slightly, it'll result in a loose fish. So it's going to be hid under your anti-tangle sleeve, so leave about 10 mil, like so. And then if I just pull the anti-tangle sleeve up, that is your finished rig. Very simple, very effective, doesn't tangle, resets every time. And the best bit about it, it only takes 4 components. Very cheap rig to tie, but super efficient. On this, I would always use a wafter tipped with maggots at this time of year to really give you that edge. So how I would do that is start by taking 3 or 4 inches of floss, and then the first step is to thread the floss through the bottom of the swivel. So you've got a doubled up piece of floss there. And then the next step will be to grab a baiting needle and the hook bait of choice. So this is a tiny corn tipper. Slide that onto your needle, and then you put the floss into the latch in the needle, pull that down. Once it's onto the floss, pull it down. You want the barrel of the swivel into the bait, but you don't want the bait over the last eye of the swivel touching the big ring, because that will hinder movement within the rig. So now that is your hook bait on. The next thing to do is get some maggots on there. When I'm fishing a wafter that small, I normally put 6 to 8 maggots on. So I will take some goo infused maggots and my super fine needle, so you're not puncturing them too much. It's important you thread your maggots on fat end first. So if you squeeze the thin end and go through, you'll see there's 2 little dots on the maggot. If you go straight through the centre of them, it'll make them extremely lively. I've now threaded on 8 maggots onto the needle, and then just repeat the process you did with the thing, but this time you separate the floss. So you're only putting the maggots onto one side of the floss, slide them down. The reason I only put it onto one side of the floss is because I'm going to knot these down to keep it all in place. So what I'll do now is just tie one, pull it tight, but you don't want to rip them off. You want them to stand proud up above the bait. 1, 2, 3, and then trim the tags. On this, I would trim them about 20 mil away from the maggots, like so. And then again, get your lighter, but keep your fingers above your maggots, like so, and pinch it. And then you just burn it down until you reach your fingers, then just blob it again, and that'll keep your maggots in tight. So once you have blobbed it down, that is your hook bait secure in place, and that is your finished rig. Sometimes you'll see the hook sit slightly off. If you just manipulate the knot slightly, make it look straight. I don't steam this rig or anything, because I don't mind there being a bit of curve in the rig on the bottom, because it helps with it going up into the fish's mouth. And this rig should sit with the hook laid flat on the bottom and your hook bait just wafting ever so attractively above the hook and disguising the hook. I'm sure if you put this rig into your fishing, it'll help you get them extra bites this winter. So the final section I'm going to talk about today is comfort, safety and enjoyment. When you're out in the winter, it's often cold, wet, dark. So you need to be prepared for this. If you go fishing in inadequate clothing, bivvy, bed chair, you're not going to enjoy it. It's going to be cold, and most importantly, you're not going to respond to what's going out on there. You're going to be more concentrating on how cold you are, and it's going to affect your fishing. You're not going to fish to the best of your ability. So when you're going fishing, before you go, have a look at the weather forecast. This will help you decide what you need to take with you. But as we all know, the British weather can be very unpredictable, so always have spare sets of clothes left in sealed bags in your van or car. So when it's really cold, you need to be wearing a base layer, some nice warm trackies, and layers on the top, a couple of jumpers, and then something windproof or rain resistant like a waterproof coat. And if it's really bad, slip your waders on, keep you dry. Last thing you want to be doing is getting in your bed damp, because you're just not going to have a good night's sleep. Also think about your bivvy. I never use a ground sheet in the summer. In the winter I always do. It keeps all my kit dry, keeps the damp off me. If you're not going to have a front on your bivvy like I don't, have it facing away from the wind, not into it. Or ultimately bring a front with you, so if the wind does swing, you can zip it up and keep warm. Keep yourself full of food. Hot meals 2 or 3 times a day in the winter will keep you warm, and also plenty of coffees. And if you're like me, a little tipple of Bailey's in there as well, keeps that cold off. So that brings my winter tactics and tips video to an end. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you on the bank sometime soon. And don't forget, if you're in doubt of where the fish are or anything, please ask me or one of the bailiffs. We're here to help.